Welcome to EduRev.
Hello friends, welcome to EduRef. This is Binu Krishna. I have considerable expertise in teaching the subject of art and culture for UPSC CSE aspirants. In this lecture of art and culture, we are going to continue with the series of Indus Valley Civilization. And if you could remember, in the last modules, we were dealing about the subjects of town planning, we dealt about the topic of social life, and so on. But today we are going to take up the subject or the topic of seals, sculpture, and pottery. So we are going to concentrate on a very small part, which is seals, the various sculptures that is found there, and the pottery. Seals, sculptures, and other artifacts. So the Harappan sculptors, they were adept. They were extremely skilled in making three-dimensional volumes. So a variety of stones like steatite, quartz, and crystals, they were used. They were also very skillful in making terracotta figurines, bronze figurines, terracotta figurines, and so on. So the above are indicative of the high standards of craftsmanship, knowledge of metrology as in measurements, and the flourishing trade and commerce. Because when you talk about seals, seals had an exquisite mark of how much trade has happened, because there were certain seals which had the shape of ships. There were certain seals which had the occupation of fishing inscribed in it. There were certain seals which was used mainly for trade and commerce, as in to designate that this particular good has come from this particular part of the world. That is, they will have the symbol of Meduha or the symbol of the Harappan sites inscribed on them, which shows that this particular product has come from this particular place in the Indus Valley. So that is why we can say, because of the importance of trade and commerce that is associated with the various seals, because of the marking that each and every tradesman give for themselves, we find that the predominance of the presence of different types of seals, it actually indicates flourishing trade and commerce, flourishing growth of education also, because certain seals had mathematical symbols attached to them. So these seals help us to understand the amount of significance of the society at that point of time. So first thing that we are going to read is about the seals, and then let us move on to the sculptures. So steatite, that is actually a soft stone, and this particular stone is the most common used material by the people for making seals. And the seals have inscriptions in a pictographic script, which are again written from right to left, and animal impressions are also carved on the surface of the seals. Now, try to remember this. Archaeologists have found different sizes and shapes of seals all across the excavation sites. While most of the seals are square in shape, it was also found that certain seals are actually triangular, a large number of seals are circular in shape, and so on. So the predominant shape was square. But remember, there were also other shapes like triangular, rectangular, or circular shape. And apart from this, apart from the material, what is important is the pictographic script. Now, certain seals had this kind of pictographic script on them. Uh, on one side, what happened in the other seal was the seals had an animal figure or a human figure on one side and an inscription that was written on the other side. Or there are certain other seals in which inscriptions are written on both the sides. So this is how the pictographic script of the Indus Valley civilization people is very well evident even in the seals. Now seals were used for many purposes. What sort of purposes? First thing is it is used for commercial purposes, because some seals with a hole on them, it is also found on dead bodies. Now this indicate that they might have been used as amulet. Now, some seals, it was used solely for commercial purposes. Like, how do you identify it? Because that particular tradesman, or it might have had a symbol of a good. So we can easily identify that certain ship symbols are used. So this kind of things helps the archaeologist to identify the trade might have flourished properly. So certain important evidences are left in the form of seals. So commercial purposes is one such thing. Now dead bodies also do have such kind of seals. That actually shows, this indicates that they might have been used as amulets, which is carried on persons of their owners, probably as some form of identification. Now, as I've told you before, it is also used for education purposes. Mathematical images is also found, which shows that education is also one of the very prominent activity of IBC sites. And now we are moving on to some of the prominent seals which is found in IBC. What sort of seal the very important seal is, and by far the most important one is this Shiva Pasupati seal. So Pashupati was considered to be the father god or the prototype of Lord Shiva, and now he is actually the present day, he is venerated as Lord Shiva in contemporary Hinduism. Now this figure is actually sitting in a yogic posture. He is sitting in a cross-legged. Take a look at the figure that we have here. He is actually sitting at a cross-legged posture, which is a yogic posture in Hinduism, and the figure is surrounded by a number of animals. It is very important that you try to remember the animals which is present in this particular seal. Take a closer look at the figure, because figure, as I've always told you, it will help you to retain them in your memory. So you have a tiger in one side, an elephant is also present. An elephant and tiger are present on the right hand side of the figure. Now, please take a note of it. It is the right hand side, as in the right hand side of Pashupati. You have a tiger and an elephant. Now, the sides are also important. Try to remember that also. And on the left hand side, you have a buffalo and you have a rhinoceros. Now, on the bottom part, you have two antelopes, which is lying below the yogic figure. So you have two antelopes are also shown in the figure. So these important animals, try to remember that. And not just that, there is another important animal, which is the unicorn. So unicorn is actually considered to be a mystic animal. So there are many unicorn seals which is found in Indus Valley civilization. This is very significant seal which depicts a unicorn, which is a mythical animal, a horse that is present with a single horn. And then you have a humped bull seal. This seal, it actually shows a humped bull, and it has good depiction of the features of animals, because the hump is properly depicted. You have the beautiful mane of the bull also. Now, all these are indicative of the knowledge of wild animals and the hunting that is predominant in that part of time. And now we are moving on to sculptures. So interestingly, one important technique that you have to learn, or you can very easily remember, is the lost wax technique. So when you're trying to write an answer on sculptures, try to quote this important technique of making bronze statues, which is lost wax technique, or the seer Perdue. Now, the Harappan civilization is essentially called as the age of bronze, or the Bronze Age, right? So certain important bronze sculptures are very important. Like for example, the bronze dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro, the bronze bull of Kalibangan. These are very, very important. And what sort of technique has been employed to to build these bronze sculptures? It is the lost wax technique. In this technique, what happens is you take the molten metal and you pour that into a mold. What sort of mold? You make the mold out of wax. You make the mold out of wax, and suppose let us say that you have to make a cup like this. So what you do is you essentially create a wax cup like model, and in the inlay of the cup you try to coat it with some sort of clay. So what happens when you pour the hot metal into it? It gets molded into the shape of the figure, because you are coating it in the inside with clay. So clay does not heat that easily. Whereas you heat this entire mold, you heat them in a proper system. And because of this heating, the wax melts, because of which the outer covering completely melts, and the wax is then allowed to pour out through a tiny hole. Now, what happens when the wax melts out? You essentially get the shape of the figure. The clay is coated on the outer side, and inside you'll be having the figure. Very simple thing. Now you break the clay, get the shape out of it. So this is nothing but the lost wax technique. If not very detailedly, try to remember the term alone, because it might help you when writing an answer. And it's not that rocket science, it's quite simple science only. So that's the lost wax technique. And with that as the base, certain important bronze sculptures are created. Now, this you cannot neglect. This is quite important. The dancing girl statue. Now, this small bronze statue of a dancing girl, it is found at Mohenjo-daro, and it is an excellent example of the art and metrology of this period. This is a 4-inch figure which depicts a naked girl with only ornaments present. Now, which includes, take a look at the picture again, bangles in the left arm and an amulet and a bracelet on the right arm. So this is the amulet and this is the bracelet. So the rest of it, the rest of the hand, in the left arm, it is covered with bangles. She is also wearing a necklace, and her arms are shown to be unusually long. She is having unusually long arms, and she stands in Tribanga. What is Tribanga? Try to remember that also. If not for anything else, at least try to remember Tribanga. What is the Tribanga dancing posture? With the right hand on her hip. So this is quite important dancing posture in when you learn the dance modules. When you learn the dance modules, you will get to understand what I mean by the Tribanga posture. So what is this Tribanga posture, especially in the Odissi dance form? It's very, very important. Now, three important places, which is the neck, the waist, and the knee. So they are actually twisted in different directions, making the dancer appear as if an S-like form. So this is what we call it as the Tribanga. That is your neck, your waist, and your knee. It's actually tilting in different sides, which is actually making it appear as if in an S-like shape. So that is the Tribanga dancing posture, which is very important in Odissi dance form. And we'll be learning more of that in your dance modules of art and culture. Then coming on to the bearded priest statue, certain things are important. Take a look at the eyes of the bearded priest. They have a very elongated, half-closed position. They are in an elongated, half-closed position, as in the form of doing or practicing meditation. And then take a look at the shawl that is there in the figure. That is why I always stress the importance of figure. Take a look at the shawl that is present, trefoil pattern. We call this particular pattern as trefoil patterns. So you have the figure is actually draped in a shawl with trefoil patterns. And this is one of the best examples of stone figure. It is a stone figure which is found in the Indus Valley site. And what is another important thing is an amulet. An amulet is also worn. So an amulet on the right hand and a plain woven fillet across the head. So yes, that is also observed in the figure. So yes, try to take a quick look at that. Moving forwards, mother goddess figure. Yes, just like how Pashupati's seal is important, in the same way, the mother goddess figure is equally important, because from here onwards we are going to dwell upon the terracotta figurines of the particular IVC times. What is terracotta? It refers to the usage of baked clay for making various sculptures. Now, compared to the bronze figures, if you take a look at the terracotta figures that is shown, for example, take the mother goddess figure, they lack the finesse. They are very, very crude in shape and form, and they are lesser in number also. And most importantly, the finesse in which the bronze sculptures are made, that is actually lacking when you talk about the terracotta figures. And they were made using pinching method, as in They take the rock clay and they pinch their way through. They pinch and pinch to form an entire sculpture. So it's essentially handmade, and such figures are usually found across the regions of Kalibangan and so on. Now, very, very important is the fact that terracotta was generally used to make toys, for miniature carts, wheels, for the kids to play. So that is why we have this terracotta figurines. Coming to the mother goddess figure, it is adorned with jewelry and imposing fan-shaped headgear. The headgear is very, very important. And the mother goddess figure, it's found in many Indus sites. And this indicates the belief, the religious beliefs of the people of the civilization. The facial features are very crude in nature. They lack the finesse, and probably because of the presence of many mother goddess figures, we actually say that they might have been a matriarchal society. Male torso. This is a red sandstone figure, which is another unique form of rock sculpture. So here we are taking a look at sandstone sculpture, which is a rock-based sculpture. Now this torso has got a frontier posture with well-baked shoulders and a prominent abdomen. And what is important is you have socket holes, as in it is not a completely fulfilled figure, because they thought that later on we should be fixing hands, later on we should be fixing head, but then they left it as such. So there are socket holes in the neck and in the shoulders, probably for the attachment of head and the arms. And then comes the painted earthen jar. So yes, this is again important. It is found in Mohenjo-daro. And this is one example of the pot being made in a potter's wheel. And this is painted with black color. High polishing was done as a finishing touch. And the motifs, if you look at the figure, you can observe that the motifs are generally in the form of some floral or vegetal patterns, and some geometric designs are also seen. So this is about painted earthen jar, not that important. But what is actually important is what we are going to see next, which is pottery. A lot of questions have been asked by UPSC from pottery in general. Plain pottery and painted pottery both are equally found, and especially greater importance has been given to plain pottery. Plain pottery is more common than the painted way. And this plain pottery is generally made of red clay. And you could observe trees, birds, animal figures, and geometric patterns as the recurring themes. So you have this kind of plain pottery. This is found in abundance. This is more common. The figure that you have here is an example of the plain pottery. Then this figure that you observe here, this is an example of painted pottery. And try to remember that the potteries, they were used for three main purposes. This is where you can ask or you can expect a lot of questions from. Try to remember that three purposes. First purpose is that household purposes for the storage of grains and water. Miniature vessels are also found, that is equally important. This was primarily used for decorative purposes, and these small structures, they emulate a lot of awe, because how they actually made such a beautiful thing. So it's still evoking a lot of awe. That's not important, but what is important is, first point is household purposes. Miniature vessels are also found, but that is essentially for decorative purposes. It is not going to fetch any other thing. And some of the potteries, they were perforated, that is, they had holes in them. That is, with a large hole in the bottom, they had some holes on all across the sides. This indicates that they might have been used for straining the liquor. So this is one other important piece of information. And what is the utility and significance of seals? So when a question comes with regard to seals, give a quick introduction about the important material that is used for the seals. What are the various purpose behind the seals? Like it is used for commercial purpose, educational purposes, amulets, and so on. And try to give a short description about some of the important seals and how we can interpret history from that particular seal. That also you give a quick introduction or a quick line about it. And then very important is the utility and the significance of seals. Like many seals and similar artifacts have been discovered, but the importance of the seal is that the seal is used for sealing the consignment of goods. Remember, I've told you at the beginning of the lecture that it will place a mark of seal as to that it is originating from this particular vendor. It is originating from this particular site in the Indus Valley place. And not just that, it helps us in the identification of the seller. The next thing is it indicates the flourishing trade and commerce. The next thing is that it also indicates that the civilization, IBC, was not an agriculture dependent economy. And the symbols also show the existence of a script. And apart from these things, the symbols, as I mentioned to you, the seals are also used for as a means of identification of a person, as a means of an amulet, as a means for educational purposes. So these are various things, and also not just that, even for hunting, the knowledge that is possessed by them in terms of the wild animals, that is also indicated in the seals. So there is a multiple interpretation of the seals. So yes, let us go to some of the practice questions that we have for the day. The first question is about pottery. Try to answer this question because we just now dealt this particular topic in the lecture. Take some time and try to answer this question. Let us analyze it now. Miniature vessels were used to store grains of small quantity. Is that true? That is definitely wrong. So the first statement is wrong. Some of the potteries that were found had both large and small holes on them. Yes, it is called as the perforated pottery. And these were considered to be the defective pieces that emanated out of the Harappan culture, which is again very, very wrong because they are not defective pieces. Rather, they do have or they do serve a definitive purpose. What is that? They are used for straining liquor. Probably. That's the reason. Definitely, they are not defective pieces. Both plain pottery and wheel-made pottery were found during this time. Of course, that is true. They were adept at making a wheel-made and handmade pottery. So here the correct answer becomes 3 only to be the correct answer. The next question is, which of the following is true? So IVC is considered to be the Harappan civilization as it was the largest site amongst all of the sites discovered. Now, previously, it was considered that Harappa was the largest site, but that's wrong because Mohenjo-daro later became the largest site. So, for years together, it was believed that Mohenjo-daro was the largest site. But remember, Harappa was the first excavated site, and that is why we call it to be the Harappan civilization. So had the statement been framed like this, that IBC is referred to as Harappan civilization because Harappa was the first site or the earliest site to be discovered, then it is probably correct. But for now, the statement goes wrong because right now they found that Ratliarhi in Haryana to be the largest site amongst the sites of Indus Valley civilization. This the first statement is also wrong. The second one, Copper Age, it's not considered to be Copper Age. This time period is considered to be Bronze Age. So here, both the statements are actually wrong. So the answer is D, none of the above. With that, we are concluding the lecture for the day. There are thousands of questions, there are thousands of videos that we have. Try to take a look at it, and all of them have been prepared from by the EduRev expert panel. So that's it for today. Thank you so much and have a very nice day.